What's up, guys? I'm going to walk you through this painting I did, this self-portrait I did recently, and talk about all the process that I went through. So here you can see I started with a simple mobile phone shot of me, just from the side. Very basic, nothing interesting or particularly dynamic about the lighting. But you see I'm going to start improving things off the bat by using a filter just to sort of make it look a little bit more painterly. So I'm just experimenting with a few filters here. Sometimes I use paint daub, sometimes I use cutout. I think this instance I went with a palette knife just to make it look a little bit more like each area's just had a few strokes over the top. But that's really just to define the sort of differences between each tone. It's not anything I'm going to use in the actual final piece because it's all going to be painted over. So you see here I started sketching over the sort of main details. At this point I'm not the best at doing portraits or just sketching detail of faces. So I'm still learning quite a bit, which is why you might have noticed that I'm tracing. I think it's an interesting debate though around tracing, isn't there? Because what do you do when you paint sort of in a traditional manner, and maybe you're drawing from a photograph? You normally divide it into grids, and then all those grids you map out the sketch of where you sort of see those areas, sort of copying it from there. So it's kind of like tracing, but you're sort of doing it a bit more from eye. Whereas I suppose the beauty of digital art is it's very, very easy to trace. So I guess why not? Why not do it? So you see here my sketch here is not the best, but I'm just sort of laying down colours at the same time to try and get a feel of. I really wanted to go with my same colour theme where I usually use a lot of pinks or reds and sort of this sort of dark and neon sort of retro feel to it. So now I'm using one of my brushes that you might have known, my angle brush, the angle brush which you can download. So I'm just using that just to literally paint over a sort of a skin tone over the face and just the hair. And one thing you notice I like doing as well is experimenting a lot with blending modes. Not just on the layers, but I also, in terms of my actual, when I use a brush, I like to play with the blending mode as well, because if you've watched my brush tutorial, which is pinned at the top post on Patreon, you'll notice that all of my brushes, I've got, quite a few of them, I've got them defaulted to a blending mode. This way, whenever I lay down some kind of paint, it sort of reacts with what's underneath rather than being a solid block. And most of my brushes aren't solid blocks anyway. They're usually quite transparent, and you'll notice the opacity and the flow have been brought down anyway. So it stops the paint from getting muddy, or not muddy really, just from creating a solid block. I still want the strokes to appear through, so it looks a bit more like traditional painting. I guess, I am trying to mimic traditional painting with this sort of style and approach that I'm doing. But at the same time, I'm still utilising what's the beauty of digital. Probably notice here that I haven't got the chin right, and towards the end of the video, you'll notice that I do start to improve that, cutting out bits and pasting and adding a few new layers here and there. So I'm just painting the eye at the moment. That's something I learned how to create a bit more realism in recently, where it was a lot about leaving a block of white just for reflection, and that really does bring it to life and make it feel a bit more three-dimensional, and also about making the top part of the pupil darker in colour than the bottom part of the pupil. Sorry, not the pupil, I believe it's pupil, is the iris. I'm not sure the anatomy of it, but yeah, so sort of the top part of that inner ball of the eye, inner ring of the eye, you make the top part dark and the bottom part a little lighter. And then you obviously have, it's the pupil, that's the little dot in the middle, isn't it? You have the pupil that's completely black in the centre. So you can see now I've mapped out quite a few of the colours and tones, and it's starting to create a bit more of a three-dimensional look to the face. I keep turning the bottom layer, which is the actual photograph, on and off every now and then just to get back that reference. But you can see that I've completely removed that out of the equation in terms of the final image now. So none of the actual bits of that painting are bleeding through at the moment. I do a little bit of blending with it later on, just to bring a bit more realism in the skin tones and the features. So I'm using my flat brush here just to map out a nice backdrop. Just trying for that sort of almost like a, what's it called, 3-point lighting, where you've got a key light at the front, and then maybe a fill light to the side, and then you'll see that I highlight the back as well, so I have a little bit of backlighting as well of a slightly different colour, which I think always gives it a bit more of a pleasing result. I'm just adding the colours in, just so that the illumination of the light can actually be seen casting onto the skin. Probably notice as well that the sketch, which I actually sketched in white, I use the pencil sketcher brush that I've got, and I'm still allowing that to stay on the image, so I haven't completely removed it. In a way, that's to get that more traditional, I guess, authentic feel to it. What I really have been turned off by recently is some of my older work, where I think I've just been too obsessed with making it look realistic. So it's really nice to just go completely the other way and go, you know what, leave some of that sketch in there, leave some of those mistakes in there, kind of borrowing from that the Japanese philosophy, I think it's called wabi sabi, where there's sort of beauty in imperfection, and that's where I'm trying to go with this sort of style, and I find it much more enjoyable as well. So here you can use, talking about traditional art here, but you can see me using a lot of the digital techniques, using the lasso tool, which you saw me a minute ago, just trying to cut bits out and move them around. I think if you do understand the way colour works, and if you understand anatomy a little bit, then you're sort of free to play with it. And I'm someone who, whenever I'm doing digital art, I never get it right first off. I like to experiment. So the ability just to move things around really helps. When I'm doing sort of a sketch in a sketchbook, or if I'm painting in watercolours or something like that, I don't often have a result that I'm happy with. I always look back and think, I wish I could just move that there. I wish I could have done, use the undo tool a couple of times there, but that's just the game, isn't it? Again, I'm coming in with the flat brush. You can see every time I have a result I'm not pleased with, I just add another layer, and then just paint over the top. So it doesn't matter what colour I lay down. I like to I keep tinkering, and it's either a good thing or a bad thing, but I think you'll see towards the end I do some even more final tweaks using, sometimes I use Camera Raw to do it, or I just use some adjustment layers just to really bring out the final tweaks. Here you can see me actually in Camera Raw now, messing around with all the different settings. Never really sure what I'm doing when I come in here. I'm just sort of, I know how to use Camera Raw because I did quite a bit of photography before, and used Camera Raw quite extensively with a lot of the work I was doing before I was really got into digital painting. But I'm really trying to apply those same principles, and I'm not sure they always work. So that's why it's a bit more of experimentation. I used to add grain as well. I used to add like a hint of grain to the painting, but I found it doesn't really work. It kind of looks a bit low quality, really. It doesn't have that authentic feel that you would get. Again, playing with blending modes here. And you can see actually that when I do start to add those filters, you can see I've converted all those layers I had, I've merged them into a smart object. So they're still available to edit and play with later on, but in order to use Camera Raw on all of it, you've got to convert it all to one smart object. And the beauty of then converting to a smart object is I can add something like Camera Raw or any other filter to it, turn it off, turn it on, blend it with it, say how much of an impact I want it to have, and I can always get rid of it afterwards. Here you can see I'm experimenting with signing the name. I was actually known as Curious Atom before this because it was part of the company that I have, but I've decided to sort of rename or rebrand myself a little bit as Retro Manny, mainly because my nickname is Manny and I like retro stuff, so I thought I'd decide on a new sort of signature there. Okay, so there you go. I hope you enjoyed that. Nothing perfect. I'm still learning a lot in terms of portraiture, but I did really enjoy that, so I hope you did as well. If there is anything that you want to ask, any questions you might have, please hit me up in the comments, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks, guys.